Hello, dear book dragons. It's August already, and I'm going to talk about the books I read in July. I actually read 12 books. Quite a lot of them were quite thin, as I've been having a holiday. I don't want to bring heavy books on my holiday, but both physically and emotionally. And the first one that I finished, which actually wasn't a very light book, but so pretty, and I didn't want to wait to read it, was The Night and the Moth, which I started in June and finished 1st of July. So it was quite a while ago I read it. And I did really enjoy it. I give it 4.5 stars. There were some things, a little bit mixed feelings about it, because it has beautiful language. It really feels old-fashioned. It's a book set in a world, a new world. Yes, Rachel Gillig is the author. She wrote another book, a series, Duology, that I read last year, which I really, really enjoyed. But this is set in a new world where it's quite a small world. It's a country where it takes like 2 days to go to another city, which feels a little bit weird. But yeah, it's a nice map, which I always enjoy. And it's a story, it's quite a dark story, about a group of women. Well, one woman who is the main person, who is a diviner. She can see kind of the future while drowning. It's like a cult, but it's like the religion they have in her country. It's really weird. This is a woman who holds it, who drives it, and she has this, I think there are 9 diviners, 9 young ladies, and they have like they work for her for 20 years, and then they're supposed to be able to live their own life after that, after they've been divining for 20 years. And just before the time is up, her friends mysteriously disappear, one after another. And just before that happens, there's a new king in the country who goes there he wants to know his future. And she meets one of his knights. So as I said, the knight and the moth. She's the moth, and the knight she meets is the knight. And they quickly start to like and annoy each other. I mean, I found her quite annoying in a way, because she was quite rude to him all the time, and she doesn't really give a good excuse to why she's rude to him. She finds him unpolished and rude and blah 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 blah. But she's lived in this seclusive world her whole life. She hasn't really met so very many men, really, except the ones who has come to the church. It's not a church, it's well, it is a church, but they call it, it's like a little bit like cathedral. It's the Aileen Cathedral where she works. And so I found it really interesting, and I mostly enjoyed a very cute gargoyle who follows her along on her adventure when she goes with this knight and the king to find the other ladies, her friends. So the gargoyle was my favorite person. He keeps calling everyone Bartholomew, which was really funny. And yeah, I can't. The end. Some things were so too clear. I knew directly who was the bad guy and stuff like that. It was a bit too easy for me to understand that. And some things that happened was like a total shock, actually. So I shouldn't complain too much. So you can see I have a little bit different feelings about it. And this is the first book of a series. I don't know if it's going to be a duology or more, because she hasn't said as far as I know anyway. But I'll recommend it. I do. The next book I read I don't have physically because I borrowed it on my holiday, which is it's a Swedish book called Väninnorna på Nordiska kompaniet, the friends or lady friends of the Nordic company, by Ruth Kvarnström Jones. Is English-Swedish writer. She's English, but she lived in Sweden for many years. And this is a second book in the Pearls of Stockholm. So the first book was around the Grand Hotel, which was built or started in the early 20th century, 1920, I don't remember exactly. And this is like the second book, so we still follow the same people, but now it's centered around this big shop. No, it's not a shop, it's a gallery. It's not a mall. One of the first malls in Sweden ever, Nordiska kompaniet, which is like very fashionable place, and it's how it started. And so you get to follow one of the people from the first book when she starts working there, and her friends still get to see what they're doing if they're not working there. And we follow the man who actually started the Nordic company. And so this is about real people who lived for real. The girls, the friends, are made up, but obviously not the man who actually started it. I thought maybe I'd written up the name of him, but I haven't. I give it 4.8 stars. I thought it was really, really good and so interesting, and because we get to follow Sweden during the First World War, and Sweden wasn't part of it, but of course very affected by it. And yeah, we even get to meet Greta Garbo. So yeah, it's really, really good. She writes really well, and it's so interesting, so many details about Stockholm that I didn't know about, and everything she has really looked back historically, so you know everything is correct. Like we get to see this the man who I've forgotten the name of, who owns the mall, having a discussion with his friend from the owner of one of the big malls in London, and he's visiting him in Stockholm, and he's showing him a painting of his wife made by Anders Zorn, and I checked it up, and it's of course a real painting. So I've got to see how his wife looked like. Those things is really interesting. Anyway, so I think they have been translated to English, so I can really recommend if you check up Ruth Kvarnström Jones. I'll write it later so you can see how it's spelled. And then I read Firebird, who is a continuation of The Winter Sea by Susanna Kearsley. And Susanna Kearsley I found her last year, and she's really a new favorite author of mine now. She's so good at writing historical romance and historical literature, and they can be really sad and heavy, but at the same time, you know, there will be mostly a happy ending, which for me is very good and satisfying. So as it is the second book after The Winter Sea, it's after that book. We don't get to follow Sophie from the first book. We get, well, I shouldn't, if you haven't read The Winter Sea, I shouldn't tell you who this person is. But anyway, we get to follow a girl called Anna. She's been brought up at the castle Slains, which we also follow in the first book. And we get to meet several people from the first book, so you recognize the names. And yeah, it was really interesting. She's kind of in danger. So one of her relatives she didn't know she had, because she didn't really know who her real parents were until one of her relatives comes and tell her. And he's Captain Gordon from the first book. Or no, sorry, no, Grammy, his name. She goes with him and to first to Belgium, where he leaves her at a nunnery to go. Well, he has to go meet the king, the James, the Scottish king. And all these books are around the Jacobite time. It's about the Jacobite kings and the people who followed them. So it's from that view. And yeah, so she gets to stay in this nunnery, and she really feels, what's it called? In a cage. I haven't been drawing anything in my diary the last couple of months, but I did find some nice stickers with a cage here. So I've been a little bit lazy about that. Because but I did write quite a lot about this book, as you can see. And it's a love story, but that comes kind of towards the end of the book, really, because she's really young. She's from the beginning of the book. I think she's 7 maybe, or 10. I'm not really sure. I don't remember. But she comes to Belgium, and another relative, or her father's brother, comes to fetch her on the way to France, but he leaves her with someone who's on the enemy side. He doesn't know that, obviously. So she runs away, and very luckily meets Captain Gordon from the first book. And he kind of recognizes her eyes because he knew her mother. But she doesn't, well, she is too afraid to tell anyone who she is, who her parents were. And yeah, so she actually lives with him for many years, but she doesn't tell him who she really is because she makes up a name. Yeah, she calls herself Jameson because that's one of the men who helped her to come to Belgium was Captain Jameson, something like that. And so from Scotland to Belgium to France, and ends up in Russia, and she lives there with Captain Gordon in Russia for many years. And apparently a lot of Scottish people who were banned from England and Scotland had a community in St. Petersburg. And as I'm Swedish, it was kind of funny to read about the Russian war against the Swedes from the Russian-Scottish view. And yeah, because the Swedes did have a settlement outside of St. Petersburg before St. Petersburg was built. So I learned a lot about that. As I said, she's really good at writing historic stuff, and you can look it up and know, well, those things did happen. I don't really do that, but yeah, I know it's because she, after every book, she writes quite a lot about the things that did happen and what didn't happen and stuff. So, and I ordered the last book in this series, and I also ordered another book by her. So I will continue reading more books by her and give it 5 stars. It's really interesting, and it's, as I said, there is a love story which have a lot of twists and turns, and you don't really know, is he a good person, is he not a good person? I was quite sure all the time that he was, but Anna wasn't. So that was kind of poor Anna. And then I read a Swedish feel-good book. I call it Feel a Lot. At least the first book in this series because I cried a lot to that book. But this is called The Seamstress and the Freedom. And the first book that I read was like the cold, I don't know how to translate it, but someone who bathes in cold water. Oh, it doesn't matter. But this is set in the north of Sweden. It's set in the 70s and now. So we get to follow two women, Helena from the first book, and then we get to follow Hilda, who has quite a sad life, I would say. She's married to a man who only thinks about his wife who died. One thing she has is the waffle place she works at during the waffle. She doesn't work there the whole year because it's closed in the summer. And Helena in our time, who has the waffle place now, but it's Hilda, who is the seamstress, and there is a lot of people from Stockholm coming up to make a film, and they need a seamstress because the one they were supposed to have was sick or something. So Hilda gets to sew for them, and that starts a whole new life for her. And so it's kind of leaving the old. And for Helena, who in our time finds the house Hilda used to live in, she really falls in love with that house, even does have a lot of sad vibe. And she was like, I want to live here, I want to start a restaurant here, because that's been her dream all her life. She doesn't want to just do waffles, she wants to make real food. And there is a third and a fourth book, and she writes, Karin Herrigård, she writes really, really well. So yes, I'm going to read all the books in that series. And then I read another Swedish book, Ett fall på Capri by Anders and Annette de la Motte, Mord under solen. So this is the detective story, Murder under the sun, a case on Capri. And I would say it's more about the people in this book than actually, and Capri than actually murder. I mean, the book starts with police finding a dead body in the water, but then you get to follow Hugo, who is a Swedish man in his 60s, whose wife died 2 years ago, and she's written him a letter 2 years later. Well, he gets to read it 2 years later, and you should go on your holiday to Italy, you always wanted to, you should write your book, and you should meet someone new, which he can't really imagine doing. And here's also a map of Capri. It was really, really interesting about reading about Capri, I suppose you say in English. So there's a lot of about history of Capri, and a lot of crazy stuff going on there from the Roman Empire. And so there is a group of Swedish tourists going together, and then there's this Italian woman called Lara, who is their tourist leader. So it's a story about those two, about Lara and Hugo, and she calls him Ugo, Italian, because Italians don't pronounce the H. It was a really sweet, and I'm actually reading the second book right now as an ebook. And I would say it wasn't that easy to try to figure out who the murderer was. It was because there could have been nearly everyone in that group. So it was well written, I would say. And I gave it, I've written 4.2 here. I would say 4.5. I always change. I don't know what all these 4-point things mean really, because some people probably say, oh, that's a 3-star, and I very rarely give a 3-star. And then I read Water Moon by Samantha Sotoyambao, I guess you say. And it's a very interesting fantasy book set in Japan, and in a it's like two worlds, Japan and a magical fantasy world. And this is beautiful Japanese writing, I guess. It's the same. This is part one. This is the fallen blossom cannot return to the branch. A broken mirror cannot be made to shine. It's a very, very poetic book. It's interesting because she describes a lot, but sometimes I don't really feel like I can see what she's saying, or what she's describing. I mean, so I was a little bit confused about what I liked about this book. I gave it a 4.4 star. Yeah, maybe I found it a bit jumpy sometimes, and I was extremely tired when I started reading this because I read it on my way home from Gotland on the boat. I hadn't been sleeping well for 2 days, so that's also one thing to think about. It was, like I said, very poetic and finurlig värld. The world was very interesting built. And then I didn't really know what would happen, I would say, but still missed something. And I couldn't always visual all the beautiful things she described, which was kind of strange. But yeah, it's about a girl who lives with her father in this pawn shop, and she's supposed to take it over. And on the day she's supposed to start taking over, her father is missing. And then this man arrives who helps her. And in her magical world, there's this kind of scary beings who come and collect the things they pawn. I can't really describe everything. There's so many things going on in this book, and a lot of things are not what they seem to be. As I said, it surprised me several times and was like, oh, that's weird. Oh, that's weird. So, and it's a lot of jumping through water puddles, that was cool. They kind of go to different places by jumping into water puddles, and yeah, I found it hard to describe what this is really about, or I mean, what's happening more, what's actually happening. She wants to find her father, and this young man tries to help her, and they're connected more than you think. Well, I'll just continue on. And then I came home and had some holiday at home and read Edenbrooke by Julianne Donaldson. I have another book by her waiting for me, and I gave it 4.5 stars. This was so cute. It was very romantic and very sweet and funny, and I really liked the imagery of England. This is like modern Jane Austen. It's about Marianne Daventry. She's quite unhappy. She's living with her grandmother, I think it is, and for some reason her sister lives in London, so they're not living together. But her sister, who is much more outgoing than her, invites her to, well, a friend to the family, and her sister wants to marry the oldest son, blah blah blah. She's more interested in just getting a good marriage, while Marianne, well, she's a little bit more shy and not very comfortable around man, and they're very different. But we don't actually get to meet her sister until maybe half the book. There is quite a lot of drama in this book, in the when she is on her way to this beautiful mansion, she and her lady friend, well, her takes care of her, gets well, there's a thief who this sorry, me and my words. Well, she's in a this thief is I'm just no sorry I can't talk about it, confusing, but the man who's driving them in the barouche, or what's it called, is shot anyway, and they have to stay at this kind of ordinary hostel on the way so he can be taken care of. And at this place she meets a man who's first not very nice to her, and then he's takes care of everything, so this man can get some help, and in the end he happens to be the son of the lady she's visiting, and of course they fall in love with each other, and it's not until when her sister arrives things start to be complicated, and yeah, it was a very cute, very lovely book, and she manages somehow to always muddy up her clothes. She's not a proper lady as her grandmother wants her to be. She falls in the not in the lake, in a stream. She gets muddy. She loves to twirl. She has a special whirl for her twirling. I've forgotten what it is, but yeah, it's a really, really sweet book. So if you enjoy sweet romance with only maybe a kiss, nothing more, definitely read this and her other books. Yes. Then I read another book that I don't have here because my sister has it, and that is T for Tarot, which is the fourth book in the Karen Sue Walker's detective series about this woman who always managed to find dead bodies around in the little place where she lives, and she has this tea shop. No, not a tea shop. She has a tea place where she has like afternoon tea and stuff where you can go, and she has an ghost in her home. They're very short books. You read them in a day, but they're entertaining, and it's fun to read a book about a woman in her 50s, and who's sure of herself, and still no love story going on, even there was almost something going to happen in this book, but it didn't. So yeah, those are not. It could have been thicker. They could have been maybe more well written, but they're fun, entertaining books. And then I read The Hidden Girl by Lucinda Riley. And Lucinda Riley died, must be 3 years ago now. And this is one of her earliest books. And her son, it doesn't say here, but her son kind of has redone this after her death, and he writes about it in the beginning, and I was quite shocked about this book. I mean, her books are feel-good books. There's always some bad guy, but they're still light and have happy endings and stuff. But this was so much darker than her other books. I was shocked. And it's called The Hidden Girl, and I would say there's 3 different girls, or you could say, and they're all hidden in different ways. And but our main girl, Leah, she starts in Yorkshire on the moors of England, and she's just a very young girl. Her mother works at this house where we follow Rose, who is an artist, and we also follow Rose's adopted daughter, Miranda, I think she's called. So yeah, you get to read. I think that's in the 70s, set in the 70s. Oh, it doesn't matter. I have a feeling it was the 70s, and we get to read quite long about her, Rose's nephew. She hasn't met or talked with her mother for many years, but he kind of contacts her, says, "Okay, can my son come and live with you for a while? I'm so busy." So she hasn't met his son. I don't think she even knew he had a son. Something like that. And he is a really nice person. And of course Leah and this young man falls in love with each other. And Miranda likes him too. So there's a lot of things going on there. And then suddenly we get to follow Rose's brother David during Second World War, and Rose, who was then Rosa, growing up in Poland, and that's when the heavy stuff starts. Their mother is English and their father is Jewish Polish, and when the war starts, they have to go and live in the ghetto, and it's just everything is just worse and worse, and the parents go missing, and in the end they are being taken to, is it Treblinka? I haven't written it down, but it's a really dark period, and I would say that they're saved because David plays the violin, so he has to play in the orchestra. If you read other books during the Second World War, you probably heard this before, that the musicians were forced to play while people were coming there, and when they were going into the gas chambers. Well, it was, I mean, those parts were so sad and horrible to read. He was just a little boy and he had to stand there and play, watching people being killed. Well, seeing them being killed, but and Rose, or Rosa she was called, she's only, I don't know, was it 5, 6, 7 when they get there? I don't remember. And she's an artist. She's an artist just like her father, and her father is there. He's an art, because he's an artist. He's been painting, been forced to paint for the Nazis, and poor David has to choose. Well, they say, "Oh, we can't have two artists. You have to choose which one are best." And of course, he chooses his sister, because he realized that his father is, I mean, he's almost dead anyway. But can you imagine? Have to choose, and yeah, it's so dark. Those parts are really dark. And then we go back in time to the 70s again, when Leah is kind of by a slump, really, because Rose has this artist. Oh, it doesn't matter. But she starts working as a photo model anyway. And so you get to read a lot about the photo model world, which also is sad and dark, and quite a lot of these annoying men around her. Rose has also an older son who we realize quite early is really disturbed, and he's been obsessed by Leah all her life. He's a photographer and has been photographing her since she was small, and he kind of follows her. He's very good at hiding. She doesn't always realize where he is, and it starts to, I mean, towards the end of the book you realize how he's really crazy. So I shouldn't really say anymore to talk too much about the book. But I would say don't read this if you're a sensitive reader. I'm a sensitive reader, but I could still read it. But if you don't want to read about girls being beaten up and taking the lives of crushed hearts, and the men in these books are so disturbing. Well, not all of them, obviously, but some of them, several of them, and it's so much is connected to the past that I could see some things coming, but not everything. And so it's very well written. I mean, you can't put it down, but at the same time, it's too disturbing. And I was really annoyed at the end. It was just too sad. And the last sentence of the book really made me mad. I was like, that was just. There was no need to make it even darker, you could say. Yeah. So I had to read something really cheery after that. And then that was feels like I've forgotten the book. Oh. Yeah, no. Anyway, during the same time I was reading that, I also read the Ladies Choir in Chilbury. Let's see what it's actually called. This is an English book. The Chilbury Ladies Choir is the original name of Jennifer Ryan. I found this in a little book place where I work. It was a really fun and sad and crazy book. This book feels like something you can make a film of, because it was a lot of drama. And it's based on letters and diary notes from the different girls and ladies in this choir. And the book starts with that the priest in Chilbury says, "Oh, we can't have a choir anymore because all the men have gone to war." This is set in Kent, so in the south of England, so it's very affected by the war, Second World War. And so some parts are really funny and some of those parts are quite sad and crazy. So Kitty, who is like 14, she's she's one of the singing. She's really good at singing, and she writes beautifully about how music is lifting them. And of course, it is the war. People die. Some of their men die. Some of the other sons die. So it's some really sad parts. And then it's also this drama about this nurse. Not a nurse. Who takes care of when babies are born. And she and the real nurse in this little town are kind of enemies. Kitty's father, who is crazy general, he has lost his son in the war, so he doesn't have an heir anymore, and his wife is pregnant. So he tells this woman, "Make sure that my child is a son." So he's crazy, and she is also crazy because she said no. But of course she sees an opportunity to make money. She's not a very nice person. So she has to switch babies, and it's just crazy. So as I said, a lot of things going on, and people being in love, and Kitty's older sister falls in love with this artist who does strange stuff, and they're not really sure, is he a spy, or is it only, it's so many things going on. I give it 5 stars, because I found it really catching, and yeah, it was really good. kind of crazy. I want to read more by her, I would say. And then I read Jenny Colgan. Like I said, I need some really something cozy after The Hidden Girls, so that's when I started on this, and I read that in a day. I mean, as you can see, it's more like a novel, a short novel. In Swedish, novel is a short novel. Novell, they say. Anyway, so if you read any other by Jenny Colgan, she has a series of people living on a little island called Mur or Mur, I don't know exactly how to say it. Mur. And it's about Lorna, who works at the school, and then Saif, who comes there as a immigrant, and he's got a job there as a doctor, so that's why he goes to this little island all the way up in the sea, and so it's and they fall for each other, but he is married, so it's not that easy, and it's kind of a sad book because Lorna's dad is really sick. He misses her mother who's dead, and it's a lot about the community, really, how the people on that little island take care of each other. It's a sweet book, but it was more sad than I hoped for. But yeah, it was cute. I gave it 4 stars. And the last book I read, I don't have physically because I read it as an ebook. I think it was the 7th book in a series, a detective series by Karin Julström. And I've been listening to those books before, and I had stopped reading and listening to ebooks and audiobooks. I put myself on queue in the library, but it was like 88th pace, and then I got this, you listen to Storytel for 9 crowns for 45 days. So I got that, and I mostly read it. And it was a really good part of the series. It's not cozy crime in that way. There's just a little murder. It's kind of dark story about family tragedy, family, like a kind of mafia family in Sweden, and so you still get to follow Siri, who is an old actor who moved to the little place outside of Stockholm to live with her nephew Anton, and then Olle, who's the police, and his boss Hansi Brimar, who is a really annoying, horrible person. And I was like, hopefully, finally, Hansi will be put in jail. I would say that this book kind of felt like a wrap up, that like it could have been finished series because there were so many things that did wrap up, but the ending felt like, no, this was not the last book. Maybe next book. Probably next book. I really like her writing. I really like that the main person is like 65, and when you listen to the book, the person who's talking really fits his voice. Yeah, so those were the books I read in July, and I'll see you later at the end of August. Bye.